everyone. Third luck is the charm. I'm so sorry. My phone is going crazy right now. But I'm gonna start over with what I was talking about with you before I got messed up. So with blindness, a lot of people say, hey, you have limits and we feel bad for you. No, that's not exactly true. For me, I'm totally blind, but I am able to do lots of things. A lot of people say, like, how can you do that? Well, you have, sorry, when one of your senses shuts off, all of your other senses goes, they get stronger. Like, I have really good hearing. My dad just thinks that I don't, but I really do. So what I was going to show you was what it's like to be either blind, like me, or a visually impaired person. It's the same thing, but a blind or visually impaired person. A lot of people who are blind and visually impaired person have the same quote that I do, which is, I may be blind, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I can still go out and do a sport. I can still go out and train to be a cheerleader. I can still go out and play 5 different instruments, like I do. And there are many programs who have helped me go through all of that. They have been the ones that, they go through what they need to go through, and they need to, they just do, do all of that. The first program I actually did was at TSB. I was at TSB for 3 years, and what TSB had taught me was pretty much the same thing, where they hold your hand for a little bit and then they say, okay, go to where you need to go. You're on your own now. We can't help you unless you necessarily need it. And I was able to go through and do the route, or go through and do the work. The next program I did was at Savvy. And Savvy is the same thing, except for they're different. They're going to teach you, but they're not going to hold your hand, and they're not going to say, okay, this is, for instance, this is the terminal. They're not going to do that. They want you to know what it's like to be in the real world, which, I get. Also, with Savvy, you're provided a mentor if you want one. I have a mentor of my own. I don't think I should say who she really is, but she's really great in showing me that, okay, you're in the real world now. Like, you need to go on and you need to do this on your own. You need to go and you need to find the Circle K for me. Can you do that? Now, a lot of people are wondering, okay, well, how do you read and write? I should have talked about this before my phone decided to go crazy. Now, a lot of people who are totally blind, like me, or have light perception, like another one of my friends, I'm just not going to say who she is, we all read what's called Braille, and everyone's like, well, what's Braille? Well, Braille it's like print, but it's not. It's dots. It's dots, like, it's Braille dots. Dots that are raised dots. Before it was just dots, Braille was like raised print. Braille had the raised print letters, but now they've switched it out to dots. For instance, the A is dot 1, the B is dots 1 and 2. A lot of people have the technology, for instance, the Braille Note Apex or the Braille Note Touch. I've never used that before. But, you know, the Braille note, Apex, and Touch are pretty much the same thing. Now, the best time to learn Braille is as soon as you possibly can. I've had it since I was 3. And now, a lot of people are like, well, how did that happen? Well, I was born blind, and I had the all-school service where I had school a little after I was born. You have that until you're 3. Then you start going to then you start going to school, pre-K. And excuse me. And excuse me again. And that's when you start learning Braille. That's when you start learning how to read and write. That's when you start learning how to, you start all of that when you're about 3 years old. And it just keeps going, after you learn how to at least use a Braille typewriter, which is what you're pretty much using. Then you start learning how to use other stuff, like, you start learning how to use what's called an abacus, which is like a calculator but with beads on it instead of buttons. And you push those beads up and down. There's a rod, and you push them up and down for numbers. Then you start, a little while later, once you start to catch on to the abacus, then you start learning how to use a talking calculator, which most of you all know that's a calculator, a regular calculator, but talks. It talks. Then, after a talking calculator, then you start learning technology. I started using the computer in 5th grade. Then I started using the Braille note Apex, which is an electronic brailler. Also, I started using the Braille. Okay. I started using the Braille note Apex when I was in 4th grade. I've started using the computer when I was in 5th grade. Kept on going until now, where now I'm learning how to use the Braille note Touch. I've started learning the Apple devices in 6th grade. Now what they want you to know is, when using Apple devices, they want you to learn as quickly as possible. And I was taught, like I was in the military. Like, you had no choice but to do this. You had no choice but to learn it. And I started using Samsung in 6th grade. And it turns out Samsung and Apple are the same thing, except for the only thing that they don't have is a rotor setting. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about with being blindness is your limits. You don't have limits unless you have a different circumstances. But you don't really have a lot of limits. Like, if you have like retina precautions and we get it, then that's, something that you couldn't do, then that's okay. But I, on the other hand, do not have limits. I am, like I said, I'm training to be a cheerleader and also to play a sport called goal ball. Goal ball. I can't talk. So, what goal ball is, I think you have to like throw yourself down and make sure that you block the ball from like not going into your goal. It's like catch, but you're doing it like on the ground. Like, I think you're like lying down, but I haven't played it before, so I can't really explain it. But you're doing that, and then also you're doing, I play 5 different instruments, and I've had teachers teach me how to play all of these instruments that I know how to play. I've been playing piano since I was a little girl. I really was. That was the first instrument I started to play. And I have to say, I may not know a lot of songs, but at least I practice. I've been playing the guitar since I was 6th grade. Also the ukulele. So the guitar and the ukulele were all in the same year, 6th grade. I was playing the violin since 7th and 8th grade. And I played the steel drums at my 8th grade year. So I know how to play a lot. And I'm still working on the marimba, which is like a half xylophone, half, the other thing I would like to talk about with you is O&M. How O&M is done at Savvy. Like I said, they don't just hold your hand. They want you to know that this is what it's like to be this is what it's like to be in the real world. Like, that a lot of people, they do things and they're like, oh, well, we don't like that. Well, they're showing you, hey, I'm going to show you what it's like to be in the real world. Now, if I were you, I would probably pay attention. The only thing I don't really like about Savvy is, like, they're pretty much judging us. No, I shouldn't say that. Sorry guys. Okay. The only thing that I don't like about Savvy is, like, you have to wear a blindfold, which I understand why it's supposed to be, but it's not like we're all the same. Like, most of us are visually impaired. Most of us have vision, and most of us are blind. Totally blind. And, and I get why they're doing it. They're doing that to make sure that you understand that that's why, that this is what it's like to be blind. This is what it's like, if I ever lose my vision, this is what it's like. This is what it's going to be like, for me being blind. Now, like I said, you are provided with a mentor. I'm not gonna really tell you who mine is. And the last thing I want to talk about the last two things I want to talk about before I sign off and upload is seeing eye dogs and how school works. So the next thing I'm going to talk about with you is how school works when you're being blind. Like I said, if you're blind or visually impaired, I would get the all-school service where a little while after you're born, before you're 3 years old, you learn the steps, about going to school. You learn your shapes, you learn all of that. Now, when you're at school, you have what's called the teacher of the visually impaired, who will teach you, who is your resource teacher, who pretty much either helps you out on work, does some braille stuff, does, your reading inventory, things like that. Now, the O&M is the one, and O&M stands for Orientation and Mobility Instructor. She's the one who, she's the one who will teach you about routes and how to use your cane. And how to use your cane is just before you turn 3. They'll show you that. But also, they show you what it's like to be in the real world, which also goes on to the next topic / last topic about seeing eye dogs. I did a Juno walk not too long ago, just before Christmas break, and the Juno walks are really fun because it's a simulated guide dog walk. The O&M person that I have, his name is Dave, and this time I will tell you who I had, that way, he played the role of a guide dog. And since it was a Juno walk, I had to say Juno. Now, as you're going somewhere, it's best to remember the route correctly than to have it wrong, because your seeing eye dog will remember, well, you wanted me to go that way, so. And just so you guys know, seeing eye dogs are they're the dogs for the blind or visually impaired people. When they retire, they can go anywhere.